Hi everyone, thank you for joining my session. I will talk about today mastering SharePoint framework like a Jedi. I hope that you will enjoy my session. So then let's start. And let's go with the first slide. Okay, before to start, let me say a very big thanks to our sponsor. Con el apoyo de nuestros patrocinadores en el Microsoft 365 Saturday Madrid. Without our sponsors, it's impossible to present to you today. Okay, few things about myself. Who am I? I am Giuliano de Luca. I am a technical architect, blogger, speaker. In May, I started to be very active on my YouTube channel, and I try to post two videos per week. I talk about Microsoft 365 and Azure in my blog and in my YouTube channel. I have been awarded 3 times as a MVP Office Development. This is the 3rd time in a row. Here there is my Twitter handle if you want to follow me or if you want to give me feedback about everything in the context of Microsoft 365 and Azure, feel free to do it. Here you can find the address to my blog and finally my YouTube channel. So it's very important if you can have a look because there are a lot of videos and are interesting from every perspective, from an IT pro developer and end user perspective. And I hope that you will enjoy. And then there is my GitHub account where you can find more or less 50 repository, and I hope you will find something useful for you. I am the author of MyLeo bot. This is a nice bot, free, available on the Microsoft Teams store. You can download it and you can play with it. Basically, it helps you to provide how many tasks you have. You can create tasks in Planner, or you can send an email. You can change your profile picture on Office 365 and other things. I was born in Rome, so I am an Italian guy, and since 5 years now I moved in Germany. Okay, let's kick off the agenda. So I will cover several topics. The first one, of course, is SharePoint framework. Then I will give you an overview about Microsoft Graph API and Fluent UI. And finally, SharePoint, what you can do with SharePoint framework in Microsoft Teams, which is probably the most used tool on Office 365. And finally, conclusion. Okay, let's kick off the first topic, which is SharePoint framework, of course. So if you are not familiar with SharePoint framework, now it's out from several years. I think are 3 years now, or 3.5. And basically it is a modern client-side development which allows you to extend SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. Recently, with the additional capabilities provided in the latest version. It's lightweight web and mobile. It is backward compatible, power our own experiences, and supports open source tools. It's very, very great because if you are familiar with the front-end development, you can use the framework that you prefer, React, Angular, Vue.js. It's up to you. And then there is a topic that I will cover in my session, in this session, which is Microsoft Graph API. So you can easily create a connection to the Graph API. And so this means that you can theoretically collect every information of your Office 365 environment, and you can connect a SharePoint framework solution easily with your line of business systems and cloud services. What can we create with SharePoint framework? So you can create client-side web part. So this means that you can easily extend a SharePoint page with additional wrappers. And this is a very great way because you can do this micro development, and when you add this micro development in a SharePoint page, in the end you have a very great and amazing user experience. So you are able to tailor a SharePoint page on your needs, and this is a very great way. Okay, so now let's go ahead with the client-side extensions. So this is a second type of solution that you can deliver with SharePoint Framework. This is the application customizer, and it helps you basically to inject HTML and JavaScript in a SharePoint page. In the image that you see here in this sample, basically we see that the application customizer inject in the page the top area on the page, and we have the footer here, bottom area of the page. So you can influence the rendering of the page by adding your HTML, or if you go on my GitHub account, you can find a solution, a SharePoint Framework solution, an extension, an application customizer to be more specific, that allows you to use Google Analytics on SharePoint Online, which is very, very great. Okay, let's move forward and let's talk about a second kind of client-side extensions, and this is the command set. So you can extend the command bar on top of a document library or SharePoint list by creating a new button, for example. And when you select an item in the list and clicking on this button, you can open your panel, and then you can build your business logic to do what you want. We have now the last of the SharePoint Framework extension, which is the field customizer, and this allows you to render a column by providing your look and feel. So you can provide your component. In this case we have the percentage column, and we have this progress bar rendered. This is a SharePoint Framework field customizer. So this, from my opinion, this is now it's competing with the list view column formatting, and yeah, because with the column formatting on SharePoint Online you can do amazing things. We will see in the next slide, and you can even influence the list view. So you can, with the list view formatting, with a simple JSON, you can influence how the view is rendered. So just to give you an example, this is what you can do with a simple column formatting on a list. But to be more specific, this is a list view formatting. We have a title here, a normal title, and then we have a description. And with just a JSON, this is what you can do. It's a very amazing user experience. So we have the title, in this case with 3 items in this list, and the title is March 2020, April and May, and the description, it's completely rendered as a timeline, and with a panel. When you click on a point, you can open this panel by giving to the user more description. Okay, in the latest version of SharePoint Framework, there is the ability now to create a Teams tab. And this is very, very great because you can develop just a SharePoint Framework solution, and you can write just one time the code, and you can deliver your solution to different platforms, SharePoint and Teams. This is very great. In this case, we have a SharePoint Framework solution as a tab in Microsoft Teams. Then we have This is one of my favorite capability of SharePoint Framework. You can have your SharePoint Framework solution embedded as a personal app in Microsoft Teams. So clicking on your personal app in Microsoft Teams, you are able to render your SPFx solution. Finally, we have another important piece of the capabilities, which is the library components. Instead of referencing the same library in different SharePoint Framework solution, so let's say that in a SharePoint page you have two wrappers, and in these two wrappers you have the same library. Let's say you use Moment.js. When you open the SharePoint page, the Moment.js library is loaded twice in the page because it's referenced in both wrappers. What you can do to optimize the performance and reduce the bundle also of our SharePoint Framework solution is creating a library component, and you can basically share code across all the wrappers that you have in your environment. And this is very great because you write one time the code and then you reuse what you have done previously. You can also create helper methods, for example, where maybe you want to execute your business logic, which is specific for your organization, and you want to share this method across all your wrappers that you have in your tenant. So you can easily do that by creating a library component. Okay, let's move forward now and let's talk about the toolchain in SharePoint Framework. So you have several tools in SharePoint Framework. You have Node.js, Yeoman, which helps you to scaffold a SharePoint Framework solution. And this is an important step because the first time that you create your solution, you need to create a template. In this way, you don't start from scratch from a blank project, but you have the entire solution structure already created. And this is part of the scaffolding project provided by Yeoman. Then you have Gulp. Gulp allows you to execute tasks in your SharePoint Framework solution. You can execute the build, or you can create the bundle of your solution. You can then create the SPFx app package. All these tasks are provided by Gulp. Then we have TypeScript, which is a language scripting, and it's similar to JavaScript. And you can, if you are familiar with C#, you can find a lot of similarity because you work with typed object, and it's very great. This is a lack, for example, in JavaScript, and it covers by TypeScript, so it's a superset of JavaScript. And finally, we have Visual Studio Code, which is a tool that allows you to create a web application more in general, and it allows you to create SharePoint Framework solution and to develop SharePoint Framework solution. What kind of frameworks we can use? So you can use React, AngularJS, Knockout, Vue.js, whatever you want. It's up to you. Then we have, just to compare the tooling with old tools, we have JavaScript, and you can compare this with Microsoft.NET and IIS Express when you develop .NET web application. Then we have NPM, which is a package manager. It's comparable to NuGet package, and you can install every JavaScript library that you want. Then I already mentioned about Gulp. Gulp, it's a tool that allows you across tasks to create the bundle of the solution, to build the solution, and in the end to create the app package. And finally, we have Yeoman that create the first template of the solution by giving you a build structure. And finally, we have TypeScript, which is comparable to C#. Okay, Yeoman, as I mentioned before, it's a tool. It's a command line tool that allows you to scaffold the solution. We have several questions here when you start Yeoman, and so basically it allows you to create the solution, and you can provide a name of this solution, a description, and then there are other important options that you have to fulfill. And one which is very important is if you want to make your solution tenant-wide available or only installable on a specific SharePoint site. This is completely different, so you have to take care and think about what you want. So if you want to deliver, for example, a web part useful to the entire organization, so then you have to consider to make this web part tenant-wide available. So then you have to click yes, and you have to provide the ability to the admin to check an option button, and after that the web part will be visible and available to the entire organization. Here we have a bullet list of most useful gulp command, and we have gulp serve that run your browser instance where you can test and debug your SPFx solution. Then we have gulp build test if you use the tests of your SPFx solution. You can run this test with this command. Then we have gulp bundle, gulp package solution. There is here the flag -- ship if you want to make a deploy on production. With the flagship, basically you are telling to Yeoman to create an gulp to minimize the JavaScript file, CSS, in order to have the best performance possible. So then we have gulp clean, where you can clean your solution from previous build that you run. And finally, we have trust dev cert. This is very important because it installs a certificate on your local device. In this way, you are able to debug and test an SPFx solution on your local machine. Okay, we covered now this part of this session, the first topic. Moving forward now with the second topic, Microsoft Graph API and Fluent UI. So Microsoft Graph API, it's a big container of API that surface Office 365. You can consume this API to read, update, and write or delete any content on Office 365. So Microsoft Graph API are around of the user, and you can collect conversation, files, devices, tasks. You can collect all emails, events, or groups on Office 365. This is just a bunch of example what you can do with the Graph API. This is the Microsoft 365 platform, and the Graph API connects your solution to to the Microsoft 365 environment. So that means that you can collect any information related to users, chats, files, devices, mail, alerts, events, security, search, any other content. So as experiences, we have on Office 365 documents, conversations, portals, timeline, search, and what you can do is extending this experience. Then from another side, from another perspective, is build your experience so you can create your own solution. You can, for example, create your web apps that consume the Graph API in order to stay connected with your Microsoft 365 environment. Similarly, you can do the same for bots. For example, imagine that you want to have a personal assistant in your organization where you are able to stay in touch with news. So you can search news in SharePoint, for example, with this bot. Or maybe you want just to have this personal bot that book you a meeting with your colleagues. So there are a lot of scenarios that you can cover by leveraging the capability of Microsoft Graph API. There is another one which is really important, and it is the daemon apps. So this is very helpful when you need to build a background process, or maybe you need to have your custom API where you need to elevate the privileges of the current user. So this is a use case of a daemon apps where you give full permission to this app in terms of application permission. This means that, for example, you can provide read and write permission for groups. And with the application permission, your API, for example, is able to consume across the Graph API all groups, and you can update information or you can delete groups. This is just an example. Then you can automate workflow, and you can build also your analytics apps. Another important thing is Fluent UI. Fluent UI, previously called with another name, but now we have this new name, and provides the user interface to your SharePoint framework solution. You can easily add text box, buttons, message bar, whatever you want, list in your solution. And the great benefit by using this front-end, this framework, is that you can have the same user experience that Office 365 provides you. And the user in this way, it's not lost. So the user doesn't have the feeling that he's working on another application or in another platform. So for him or her, it's always the same application hosted in Office 365. Fluent UI provides web controls, Windows controls, iOS controls, and Android controls. It covers many platforms. Okay, another important aspect around the Microsoft Graph API is the Toolkit. So recently Microsoft has released this tool called the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and this provides you the ability, just with few lines of code, to add a control in your page. We have, in this example, we have the login component. It's a web component. Every component, it's a normal web component. And by writing this few line of code, basically we have 3 components included in our web page. So we have the sign in button, then we have the people picker, and then we have the agenda control, and this gives you the ability to check your upcoming events. So these components, by consuming the Graph API, is able to give you a bunch of information. There are a lot of documentation around the Microsoft Graph API Toolkit. Here the URL to get started, and it's very well explained, so you have just to read the articles and to figure out how you can set up the toolkit, and in order to implement these controls on your solution. That could be a SharePoint framework solution or a custom web application. It's up to you. And so just to summarize the configuration that you have to perform, you have to install first of all the toolkit with by running the npm install command, followed by the name of this package, and then this will be installed on your solution. After that, you have to follow some steps in order to configure properly the toolkit by providing an application ID, which is registered in your Active Directory, in your Azure Active Directory. In this way, the toolkit is able to figure out which kind of permission has this application. And if this application has the rights permission configured, for example, it is able to collect people in your organization, like in the case of the people picker. Okay, so we covered also this second important part. Now we will go through this other topic, very, very important, which is Microsoft Teams. What you can do with SharePoint framework in Microsoft Teams. As I mentioned previously, so with SharePoint framework, what you can do is write your code only one time and then reuse your solution for SharePoint and for Microsoft Teams. So this is a very great way. But what it means to use your SharePoint framework solution in Microsoft Teams? So basically you can embed your SharePoint framework solution as a tab in Microsoft Teams, and this will be added in an iframe. The assets of the SPFx solution is hosted on SharePoint, so you have to follow always the same steps in order to deploy your SPFx solution on SharePoint. And then you have just to deploy this SPFx solution in Microsoft Teams. You have two ways to do that. You can do it directly from the admin center. There is a button, sync to Teams, and the solution will be available in Microsoft Teams as well. Otherwise, you can create a package of your SPFx solution, and then you can create a manifest, a couple of icons, and finally you can upload this package zipped in the Microsoft Teams admin center. That's it. So this solution will be available in Microsoft Teams as well. Okay, then another option is the ability to install in Microsoft Teams this SPFx solution as a personal app. This is another way. So imagine that you have an important application where you have to cover the entire organization. So you have a very important application that must be used by every user in your tenant. So this is another cool use case. And in the web part, you have the context of Microsoft Teams. So you can read some information, for example, the group ID, the team name, or the current channel. I turned off the camera, so in this way you can stay more focused on the slides. In SharePoint, you have then the ability to collect the context of SharePoint of a SharePoint site, for example. And you can configure this web part in the same way for SharePoint and for Microsoft Teams. All type configuration available as for any SPFX solution, so then you have the assets, packaging, and CDN configuration to perform in the same way. So I mentioned it before that you can install a SharePoint framework solution in Microsoft Teams by following another approach. Just to make a recap, with the first method, you can synchronize a SharePoint framework solution in Microsoft Teams by clicking on a button in the SharePoint Admin Center, which is Sync to Teams. Another approach, which is my favorite, is to create an app package for Microsoft Teams, which is specific for Teams. And this gives you the ability to have 3 links in the About tab, for example, because in a personal app, you have by default About tab in your application, we will see later. And you have the ability to have 3 links. So you can use the first link to provide information around your web application, your SPFX solution, what does. Then you have another link for the privacy and an additional one for the permission. And in this way you are able to give full information to your users. This second approach, it's required if you want to publish your SPFX solution in the Microsoft Teams store. So in this case, you have to create an app package and then you have to submit this package to Microsoft. In this way, Microsoft can review your solution and eventually can approve or reject your request. Okay, let's start with the demo. I prepared 2 demos for this session. The first one, which is definitely a best practice, is to automate the deploy of your solution. I'll show you now how you can set up a release pipeline in order to have continuous integration and delivery for your SPFX solution. Okay, let me jump now on my environment. So I will open now the browser, and here we go. We have now this site, which is the Azure DevOps site, and I have here a project called SPFX DevOps. Before to go through this release pipeline, I want to open now Visual Studio Code with the solution, because I want to show you the solution, and it is this one. So basically this is an SPFX extension, and this extension collects notification when a user add items in a specific SharePoint list, which is in my case this list, the events SharePoint list. So when I add here an item, there is a task notification that pop up here on the top right corner and gives you some information around this event with a link. Okay, I'll show you now how it works. So then let me add here a new item in this list, M365 Madrid demo 1. Then let me type in a URL. So this could be my YouTube channel, for example. Here we go. Then some alternate text YouTube. Okay, now when I click on save, okay, the URL is invalid, of course, HTTPS. Okay, now I saved this new item, and a new task notification should appear in seconds. So I'm using webhooks here to get notified when a user adds a new item in this list. In this way, I'm able to work with this notification and then send this notification to the SPFx solution. And the SPFx solution, when gets this notification, basically create a div here on this page by creating this task notification, this little pop-up panel, and I have the title with a link. After 10 seconds, this task notification go away. Okay, so we have seen a color in the task notification, which is green, such a green. So then opening now the solution. So this is the background color of the task notification. I want to show you now that I changed this one in blue, for example. I save now this one and I'm able to commit my change. Color changed. I will use now the release pipeline to update my solution in my SharePoint tenant. So I will commit now this change and I will push to my Azure DevOps project this change. Okay, this will start immediately the continuous integration pipeline, and then when the continuous integration pipeline is ended, start the release pipeline to deploy the solution. Okay, now we can see that in the pipelines that this continuous integration pipeline is started. So now this continuous integration pipeline has started to follow some steps here. I'll show you later in a bit. And then when this is completed successfully, the release pipeline will start. In the meantime, I'll show you now by going on in edit mode on this continuous integration pipeline what I have here, with which kind of tasks. So I'm using an old version of SharePoint framework. So in this case, that's the reason why I'm using Node.js version 8. But with the latest version of SPFx, you can and you have to use the Node.js 10 version. Okay, so then as a second task, we have the npm install command, and this is important because you have to run this in order to install every dependency in your solution. Finally, we have the clean bundle that clean every previous build or bundling stuff that you run it. Finally, again, we have the bundle, so we have to create the bundle of this solution. And then we have the package solution command that create the SPFx app package that later you can upload on the SharePoint Admin Center. And then this continuous integration pipeline ends with the publish artifacts to the drop folder. So let me show you now the release pipeline, what happens. So when the build pipeline it's completed, this trigger, and for this specific case I used the Microsoft 365 command line interface, CLI. So then I install here Node.js 10. Then I run the npm install to install the Office 365 command line tool with this command. Finally, I connect to my SP SharePoint catalog with a username and password as a variable that I defined here. And then when I have a connection to my SharePoint catalog, I am able to add the SPPKJ file generated with the build pipeline. And we have the last task that add this and deploy this app package of my SPFx solution in my SharePoint tenant. So I think now this is completed, the release pipeline as well. So we have this release 11 completed successfully. So then I can check now if the color of my task notification is changed. So first of all, let me do a refresh. Let me check that nothing is cached here. Okay, so then theoretically we have now the version updated across the automated release pipeline of my SPFx application customizer. So let me add now a new item in this list, just to give you the perspective that the color is changed of this task notification. So then I will type in Microsoft 365 Madrid 2 demo 2. So again I have to add a URL .com Giuliano de Luca, and here again I will type YouTube as an alternate text. Saving now this new item. As I mentioned before, this should send a webhook notification to my Node.js web app that I have on Azure, and this Node.js web app send this notification to my application customizer. And I use for that kind of communication very powerful JavaScript library, which is Socket.io, and I'm able in real time to get notified, like in this case that you see here. The color is changed in blue now, so the release pipeline fully automated has deployed the solution by adding a new version of this application with the blue background color of my task notification. Okay, so we have seen also this case. You can have a look how you can configure every step in Azure DevOps in order to automate a release of an SPFx solution. In my blog there is 3 articles, if I remember well, and then there is also on my GitHub an example that you can follow if you want to build a release pipeline also in your environment. Okay, let's go now with the second demo, and I will show you now a Microsoft Teams personal app. So I will show you how you can have in Microsoft Teams a me experience or my personal space in Microsoft Teams. So this is a personal app that is available here on the left navigation pane here of Microsoft Teams, and this is a peculiarity of a personal app. You can pin this app in this way. It's always visible like other icons here, Teams, Chat, Calendar, and so on. And I also created this icon. There is a repository on my GitHub where you can find this app, so you can easily reuse it if you want. There is also this icon that I created, which is fully immersed in the same way like other icons. So it's like to have an out-of-the-box feature here. So this, as I said, this is a a SharePoint framework solution embedded as a personal app in Microsoft Teams. What I have here is basically a normal SharePoint page, and I have several web parts on it. So I have the upcoming meetings as a web part here in this page. Then I have my tasks, personal email. Then scrolling a little bit down, I have another web part which tell me how many sites I'm following, which are my recent documents where I worked on, and then lastly is the save it for later. So I have 4 news that I marked in order to read them later with more time. And I have in the bottom here weather web part where I included my favorite cities. So this is a normal SharePoint framework solution. I have here in Visual Studio Code this solution with the manifest. So that's it. This is all you need to have to install this application. So in the manifest, as you can see, I added several information. You have to provide the name of this of the developer, then the website URL, the privacy URL, the terms of use URL. Then we have the icons, color, outline, the me as a short name, and then the full name, which is my personal space in Microsoft Teams. This is very important because this tell to Microsoft Teams that this is a personal hub. When you set here static tabs, you are telling to Microsoft Teams that this is a personal app by adding also this scope. And then this is very important, the content URL, because you have to provide exactly the URL of the SharePoint page that you want to embed. In this case, for me, is this page, my personal space.aspx, in the site pages of this SharePoint site. So with this kind of approach, you are able to embed an entire SharePoint page, but you can also embed a SharePoint framework solution in as a personal app in Microsoft Teams. Okay, let me open now the SharePoint page where I have this solution, and here we go. So this is the solution. If I want to change something here, for example, I can edit this page. I can remove the weather web part because I don't want to have it. Let me remove also this section, and so that's it. Now the weather is removed. I can update this SharePoint page, and now if I open Microsoft Teams here, what I can do is make a refresh of this page, and now the weather web part at the bottom should go away. Here we go. It's no more available because I published a new version of the SharePoint page. So this is definitely another powerful way to deliver application in your organization. There is a video also. It's around 28 minutes on my YouTube channel, how you can set up my personal space or me experience in Microsoft Teams. So feel free to follow it. And again, I suggest you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You will find a lot of video. Okay, let's wrap up this session with the conclusion. So here you can find several information. You can take a screenshot if you want. There are several useful URL that you can reuse in order to get started with Microsoft Graph API, SharePoint Framework. More in general, there is also the Graph Explorer that allows you to play with the Graph API. Finally, there is the Fluent UI, that it's a powerful framework that allows you to basically add components and web components in your SPFx solution. And finally, in the second part of this slide, you can find several information around me. Again, here my YouTube channel, and then my Twitter handle, my GitHub account, my blog, my page on Facebook, and my LinkedIn reference. Okay, let's open the question and answer. I am here, available in the Windows chat. If you have questions, feel free to write in the Windows chat. Okay, thank you again for joining my session. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you again to all organizers and the sponsor to spend all efforts and making this event possible. Thank you and have a good and nice rest of the day.